Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to be here today and talk to you about digitalization. Digitalization is a big topic, so I want to limit it to digitalization in our market. So if we take a look at the innovations and developments in the lift industry, we see digitalization in every area of the industry. So many companies have digitized their inventory. We have interesting instruments, as we could see in other presentations, how digital communication and digital solutions in order to build lifts have come up in the past, and Mr. Watzke also talked about standard and guidelines. However, another huge topic is the maintenance that will be digitized, and also a lot of restrictions, like, for example, the data protection guideline. And digitalization within the lift industry also is a major trend, and that's why I want to speak about it today. So first I want to talk about the directives again, because I want to enhance the perspective that Mr. Watzke just presented, especially on the draft of ISO DIS 810220. This is something that we have to monitor really closely, not only in terms of the component builders, but also in terms of the service providers. It's not a bucket, it's a feature, but this is something that's really important to me. I want to highlight that it is worth reading this draft carefully, because if it's carried out or implemented in this way, this will have an effect on every part of the lift. Almost every part of the lift will need to be certified, and this is a major development. So already the initial phase, the development phase, will change significantly. And we enter an area here that will make it very difficult for many stakeholders to actually keep their position at the market. So if we keep this standard, the whole lift will become a so-called computer. It will be secured and monitored just as banks are secured and monitored. And we can see that the service providers will become companies that are responsible for system integrations. And this will be difficult for small and medium enterprises, and it will definitely change the market. So this standard hasn't been adopted yet, so now is the time to read it carefully, to pass and submit recommendations, because it will have an effect on our industry. We also talked about a draft for the directive on artificial intelligence. I have a lot of hope in this directive. We have a lot of artificial intelligence in lifts right now. As for now, we can see it in advertisements a lot. Let's see how it will be in real life. However, if I do this modernization, I will have to certify the items as well. And another thing that is happening on the other side of the world, something that is happening in Singapore right now, the Building and Construction Authority in Singapore, who's the legislative for lifts, is currently working on rules for a digitalized maintenance for lifts. So how should they look like? How should these systems be constructed? How should the protocols look like. These are very interesting developments. Singapore is a key actor here, and it will have an effect on the industry globally. You have also heard about the name Etsy, and a few months ago, Etsy has started to work on special European telecommunication standards, for example, open protocols and specifications that will be free to use. These are interesting because they're open and, as I said, free to use. And one project by Etsy is 1M2M, and this is basically an IoT solution that helps you to connect IoT components with ready-to-made open source bases. So you can apply them and use them very easily. It's very interesting. And I think if we take a look at the markets right now, I don't talk about the component manufacturers, but I'm talking about the big stakeholders. We have the facility managers and elevator owners. We have the service providers. Then, of course, we have the supervisory authorities. In Germany, it's TÜV, for example. And there's a new group here in the center of this slide. I gave them the name brokers, maintenance brokers, but it's basically companies that don't offer lift services, but who mediate and broker these services. And this group will change the market and is already changing the market in Europe. So if you take a look at the current situation and think about what will happen in the future, we see that a lot of these developments are based on digital solutions, and many of these stakeholders are actually trying to enhance their portfolio of digitalized services. So digital solutions will play a key role, solutions that support the service. At the same time, it's about equipment devices that are actually giving the user the opportunity to control these services. We have these so-called maintenance brokers who also focus on these devices in order to transfer knowledge and supervise, and then they will also provide reports to their clients. And then we have these supervisory authorities that are trying or that are working on creating digital solutions and also on tools on how to supervise their work. And this will change the market drastically. So let's take a look at how the market works right now. If you take a look at the life or service life of a lift, we have the phase where the lift is built. As soon as the lift is built and as soon as it operates, maintenance will play an issue, the lift maintenance. At some point, the lift will have to be modernized, and at some point again, a new lift will be needed because the old lift is not in service anymore. So as for now, specialized companies are responsible for the maintenance. They have experienced employees, at least in Europe. And we can already see that these specialized companies don't have enough employees. And talking about the market, construction and modernization are businesses. However, what characterizes our market is the service sector. This is the main, or let's say most important sector. We see a lot of developments and new players in the market. I mean, new players are good. They create innovation. We have players from other industries that have become members or a part of our industry. And these new market members or let's say these new companies, will eventually create a situation where we don't need these maintenance technicians anymore. So this can actually happen. So I can imagine a MyHammer platform where the assignments are given to the company or to the provider that actually is the cheapest. So this can happen. But what I don't see is that the market is dealing with this development. So this is something that we have to watch. So I always feel like if the order books are full, people forget thinking about the future because there will be major changes. And it's important to watch the developments because some owners, some companies will survive and others will not. This is important. So let's talk about maintenance, because I think maintenance is the main sector or main part of our sector. What we can see in almost every lift that exists globally is preventive maintenance. That means that the maintenance is based on time intervals, or it is based on the usage, which means that every, let's say, 20,000 rides, there is a maintenance. What you can see here is the wear reserve on the left axis, and what we can see is there is a lot of maintenance happening because we don't want our lift to be damaged or to break. And it's really the most primitive way of maintaining the lift. And the usage-based maintenance is much more interesting because it doesn't make sense to actually check on your lift once a month if there are only 100 rides. So Singapore is really interesting because they have these time interval-based maintenance, and by the help of digitalization, they want to make it more diverse, and they want to enhance this and change it for the better. So the first digital solution is what I call the trip counter. So there are sensors that are connected to controlling panels, and that are sensors that are able to detect the travel status and position of the cabin. And they work independent of the elevator controller. And these systems are able to recognize minor changes, and they can actually tell you if the lift is out of order or what is exactly happening inside the car. And these systems already enable a usage-based preventive maintenance.
We also find many remote access solutions on the market, and those are connected to a cloud. The elevator controllers are connected to a cloud. A cloud is not a new concept, but for over 30 years, the clouds are a major topic. The cloud makes it much easier and simpler to use the new technology. Those systems can also show certain statuses of the elevator. So I can also switch to a usage-based maintenance instead of a time-based maintenance. And here I can also use the first machine learning big data solutions, theoretically. I think right now we see a lot of publicity, but what's bad about the solution is that I always have a specific controller linked to my system. So if I buy one thing from one manufacturer and the other one from another, then I have a problem and I have to swap from cloud to cloud, and that doesn't help me much. The problems which facility managers or elevator owners have with their lifts are the high maintenance costs, and those have to be decreased. And of course, the preventive maintenance cost, of course, it is very expensive. So with this strategy of maintenance, it's impossible basically to predict breakdowns. There is no transparency in information, for example, for owners or facility managers, and I cannot actually plan what I have to invest into my lift in the future. And with the preventive maintenance, there are also problems for the maintenance providers because we don't have enough trained staff. We don't have enough lift technicians. There are not enough people who can work in that. We see it around the world that we have outdated technology. The number of lifts is increasing, and in Singapore, for example, on 50,000 lifts we have 10,000 technicians, and that's not enough. And they have to repair them, maintain them, etc. And it's very clear that this won't work. So the maintenance providers also need an increase in efficiency, and the operator of the lift has a big responsibility. The safety has to be taken into account, and that is something that the service provider has to take into account, and they have to deal with it. So that means that predictive maintenance for many of those things presents a solution. So it's based on sensors, and then I can see the condition of the main components. And then I don't have to go and pass by and have a look at the lift directly all the time, but only when I get close to the damage limit. When I can actually do that, I have many, many advantages. And it's more than that even. I can continuously improve my installation on the basis of this data. And it works now perfectly, for example, with ropes. On the basis of this data, I can see the duration, the service life of those ropes. And if I can do that, which means I can increase my reference condition, then I can extend my time interval-based maintenance even more. So the facilitation of the condition-based maintenance using IoT solutions. So it refers to the condition of the lift. It's independent from the elevator controller. That's important as well. And we can detect the current condition of the main components of the lift. So we use algorithms in order to make decisions on which components have to be replaced in the near future, what needs maintenance, what part needs support. Which means then that those systems enable predictive and proactive maintenance, which means that we can predict what will need maintenance. Depending on the solution, these systems go even further. But they can also make certain safety tests, for example. That's very important as well for question or assessment of accidents, for example. I can have a look at the data to see where the problem was, how much impact has been there, for example. So the advantages of predictive maintenance are very, very big, which means that I can replace components before they are not accessible, for example, at the time. So these systems facilitate a real-time monitoring of the lift, if it is wanted. But of course, we can also recognize states of emergency. The system recognizes if there is a load in the car and the door does not open, and then we can also receive right away the signal that a person is trapped in the lift. I can also plan the out-of-service time of my lift. I cannot. Of course, I will not just plan to stop the lift at the rush hour at the Munich airport, but I can actually plan when I want to have the maintenance and when I want to repair the lift. And that is a very, very important fact for me, because then I don't have to wait for the spare part, for example. If I know that beforehand that I'm going to need it, then the lift is not going to be out of order for a long time, but only for the time I need to replace the component. And those changes will change the whole sector. And it started already, even though many of you don't believe it. The big change from the time-based maintenance to this on-demand maintenance is a key advantage for everybody, also for the service providers. And it also has the biggest impact. And it causes many problems for the service providers, because they have to change the whole structure of their companies. So I have many technicians, and they have to do that for the next 3 months. I can plan that perfectly, but the on-demand maintenance makes me change the whole system, the whole structure of my company. The checklist-based maintenance, as we see in the US, for example, can be changed into a data-driven maintenance when somebody is in place. So there's always a list of components that need certain support or repair, for example. I already talked about the spare parts, and I can also already have my spare parts beforehand. That has a very positive effect on the elevator owners, because they keep their building running by keeping the lifts running. And also, it will change the characteristic of the service contracts. The owner does not care if the installation receives maintenance twice or 6 times a year, but they want a fixed price, and they don't care about how many times a technician arrived to fix the lift. If everything's monitored well, if there are certain amendments made, etc., then the service provider doesn't have to pass by so many times as well. So there are advantages for everybody. I just have to see them. And the whole topic of digitalization brings many risks for the old market participants, but also many opportunities. So this switch from the time-based maintenance contracts to the availability contracts have a big positive impact on both contracting parties. The elevator owners will be able to use their lifts in a more efficient way, which means more cost-efficient as well. Maybe not because of the maintenance, but maybe I have to plan less lifts in the building if they are not out of order for so many times a year. I also know how I can operate them efficiently. I can react quickly if there is an emergency. There is more transparency. And I can also plan my investments in the lift if I have the information on my lifts and installations. For the service providers, there are also many benefits. On one hand side, for example, happier clients. So if you make more clients happy, you're going to get more clients. It's easy as that. Also, I have the possibility to address my lack of lift technicians. Also, that gives me the opportunity to improve my availability. And I can pre-order spare parts if I know I have to exchange them. So the whole thing gets more and more efficient. I have to change the whole structure of my company, of course. The bookstore, the old bookstore that's not needed anymore nowadays, won't have to change the whole structure, and it still exists. But in this sector we do have to change it, but I can improve my responsibility, I can improve my installation. I think it's time for embracing digitalization, because if we don't do it, then we're going to serve digitalization at some point and we'll be left behind. And I think that it should be worth for all of you thinking about it for 1 or 2 minutes. And I think it's going to take maybe 10 years before these serious changes in the lift sector will be visible. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.